Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Lombardi Time Brews. I'm your host, John Delray, coming at you live from the unfinished basement that my family is renting the cabin of this weekend. So thought that I would just hop on here, do a quick Q&A. Just wanted to check in with everybody. Been a while, I know, been kind of sporadic this week, so thought I would hop on, do a Q&A about the Packers' impending decisions about the 53-man roster, everything that's coming with that. We know that the Packers have a number of very large decisions upcoming. This is one of the tougher rosters in recent years to kind of figure out what the Packers' intentions are, figure out which way they're going to go with a number of different spots on the roster. I just put out a couple days ago my 53-man roster prediction, where I was talking about whether even some draft picks may be making the roster or not. I mentioned how in the history of Brian Gutekunst's tenure as general manager of the Packers, there's really only been 4 times that he's released someone that he drafted that he let go of, right? And now this year, having 13 draft choices, some of them a surplus at certain positions on the team. Yeah, I think that this might be the year that we may see some more draft picks be let go ultimately by Brian Gutekunst. And there's a number of candidates. I mean, as much as I don't want it to be the case, could be Anthony Johnson Jr. in the back end of the safety room. Grant Dubose at wide receiver. I know people are very split about his chances to make the roster or not. So a lot of decisions upcoming for Brian Gutekunst and company, trying to figure out the best 53-man combination that we can get to. Like Hebbles, I see you're here. And hey, check this out. Shabam! If you're checking on the stream, you can now see comments just below. I got a whole new setup here. Decided since we're going to be doing watch parties this year. Yeah, almost every single game that the Packers do this year, I'm going to be hosting a watch party for the duration of the game. So invested a whole bunch of time into setting up something a little bit different for live streams. Hope you guys like the overall look, whether you're on Facebook or YouTube, now broadcasting live on both. We got this nice little setup. I can click on comments. It's a whole thing now. So hope you guys are liking it. So just going to be hanging out here for a bit today. If you've got any questions about the 53, about what I saw when I was able to go to practice for so many weeks leading up to this week, what we've seen in games thus far, questions about what the process is like for the Packers narrowing it down to 53, or even the game tomorrow, because tomorrow is the final preseason game for the Packers as they go against the Seahawks. I know Matt LaFleur mentioned that everyone's going to be playing against the Seahawks, that this isn't the typical year where a whole bunch of vets are going to be taking this game off, or even quarterback one, that he's going to be taking this game off. Everyone's going to play, of course, barring injury. And frankly, in my opinion, I believe that to be the right move. I really do. This is a young offense. And as Matt LaFleur has mentioned, the need is to get more and more reps, right? Especially more and more reps against a defense that's not their own, that they've been going against every day for weeks. And because they didn't play the Seahawks in joint practices this week, I think it's the right move. Now, of course, there does need to be a certain level of caution, because, you know, we can't just throw caution to the wind and just play with reckless abandon and everything like that. I mean, these guys do have to be healthy 2 weeks from now. So of course, that's something to keep in mind, but I do think playing against the Seahawks is the right move. Like I was saying, watch party's gonna be hype, man. Looking forward to it. Me as well. Really glad you're planning on being there. It's gonna be a ton of fun this year. Really looking forward to it. And Redmo is here too. What's up, Redmo? Nice to see you. So, like I was saying about the 53-man roster, I think there's a number of considerations. There's a number of spots on this team that we have no idea what the Packers are thinking. A few of them would be the running back 3 position. Now, I say in jest, we don't know what they're thinking. We know what they're looking for in a running back 3. Of course, someone who can run the ball, someone who can catch the ball. But probably more importantly, they're looking for someone who's an expert at pass pro, and they're looking for someone who is reliable on special teams. I think Rich Bisaccia, when he was at the podium the other day, really kind of gave away a lot of his feelings in regard of the special teams unit right now, because he mentioned that losing Tyler Davis, the leading snap getter on special teams last year, losing him was just like losing his right hand. And we know Bisaccia has a say in personnel. He now is the assistant head coach. For someone who holds that kind of title in the organization, to be just so blatant about feeling like they lost their right hand, I think it's a big deal. And I think we're going to see that in some of the roster decisions. So when we're talking about something like running back 3, we know that the Packers are always looking for a special teamer there, right? That may hold more weight this year than in last year's, or even compared to exactly last year. Or when we're evaluating someone at the safety position like Dallin Levitt. Now, for a few weeks, I was kind of out on Levitt. I just didn't see a path to him making the roster. You know, you've got your rookie and Anthony Johnson Jr., and then you've got your collection of dudes that may wind up being the starter, and Savage, Ford, Owens, Moore. What was the path for Levitt besides just special teams and exclusively special teams? Because he's just not someone historically that you want to give any defensive snaps to. And so for a few weeks going through camp, I was like, you know, Levitt, I just don't see it. Are the Packers really going to hang on to a guy that they're not going to trust to play defense when they've got so many other bodies at the position? Well, now when you're looking at Bisaccia making comments of, I lost my right hand, as I said in the video the other day, do you think he's going to chop off his left hand too? We know how much he trusts Levitt. We know the high regard that Bisaccia holds Levitt in. He hasn't been quiet about that for years now, even dating back to the time when Bisaccia was the coordinator for the Raiders. So I think the Tyler Davis injury really amplified, increased exponentially the chances that a guy like Dallin Levitt or other special teams aces like Eric Wilson at the inside linebacker position actually hang on to make the roster. I think that's something really, really important that we need to keep in mind as we're going through and attempting to predict what the 53 is going to look like. Looking at a couple of comments now. Janelle, hi Janelle. I still think the Packers keep only 2 running backs. I'm actually right there with you. I really do. Because the Packers have such depth at the running back position, right? And then you would think that would make it easier for them to keep 3, but I disagree. I think you've got Jones and Dillon, obviously, but then you've got Emmanuel Wilson, who UDFA from a small school. Yeah, he's balled out in the preseason, but so have a lot of other fringe running backs for a lot of other teams. And there seems to be a couple guys like this every year that play outstandingly in the preseason. And then we get really worried about, well, if we cut him, we're not going to get him back. Emmanuel Wilson kind of feels like that guy for me this year. If we let him go, I still think we get him back on practice squad. And Matt LaFleur has not been shy about talking about how Wilson is a very good runner. But when it comes to teams and pass pro, they don't know what they have there yet. And if those are the 2 most important criteria for running back 3, seems to me like Emmanuel Wilson may not be that guy. Plus, you've got Goodson, who's trying to come back from his shoulder injury. You've got Lou Nichols, who was a 7th-round pick. And, of course, Mr. Reliability, while not being exactly spectacular himself, Patrick Taylor. You've got 4 running backs there. Let's say you want to retain 3 on your 16-man practice squad and then use elevation, signings, injuries, whatever have you through the course of the season, because we know that things are going to change there. I just think it seems like they can rely on that depth and just go with 2 running backs in order to keep someone at another spot. Janelle, you've got one more comment here. You're thinking Owens is the odd man out at safety. I don't know as if I'd go that far personally. Now, Owens has been a liability in coverage thus far. He also has been the guy to be a reliable tackler thus far. He's been exactly as advertised. You know, when the Packers signed him, we knew that they were going to get a good tackling safety who struggled in coverage. It's what he had been in Houston while starting every game last year. And that's exactly what he's been. He's as advertised. But the fact that they gave him so much time opposite Savage, potentially starting in camp, I think that was to see what they have there, while also elevating him above a guy like a Tavarius Moore. In my opinion, we're going to see Savage, Moore, and Owens and Ford all stick on the roster. The questions then come down to Anthony Johnson Jr., who has been showing his range as of late, but who even MLF said the other day they need to see improvement on special teams from Anthony Johnson Jr. And then, as I was talking about earlier, Dallin Levitt. I still think the top 4 safeties are pretty well locked. And my thinking has been, who starts opposite Savage? 1, I think it's probably going to wind up being Rudy Ford, but 2, in terms of just being a starter. But I think this is going to be a pretty rotation-heavy spot on the team. I think Savage, you can bank on the fact, is going to be out there a ton. And then the other guys is always going to be matchup dependent, package dependent. What kind of running back are we going against? What kind of quarterback are we going against? Because maybe if they're going against a more run-heavy team, maybe Owens gets more playing time in that week. Or if they're going against a team with extra fast wide receivers, we see Rudy Ford or Tarvarius Moore hop in. And speaking of Moore, I know a lot of people are concerned that he's going to be the one who may be the surprise cut of the season, and his knee injury certainly did him no favors. So safety position incredibly in flux, but I think this is what we're going to see all year. It's going to be fluid. It's going to change per matchups, per games. I just think it's one spot that the Packers are going to utilize like they utilize wide receivers. Sure, you've got your starter, you've got your number 1, but then everyone else that they trot out is going to be, what do we want to do this week defensively? I think that's going to dictate the safety position. So, another spot on the team that I've been thinking about a ton recently, and one that, frankly, I just didn't really know what to do with, was the inside linebacker spot. You've got your 2 definitive starters in Quay and Campbell, like no doubt about it. And then McDuffie is certainly a roster lock at this point. He's the guy who that they trust to be the next inside linebacker in the game. But then you run into this weird little thing going on with Eric Wilson, who's a core special teamer, but they just don't seem to trust as an inside linebacker. And then you've got safety convert Tariq Carpenter. Now, Carpenter's only in his 2nd year in the league, spent all last year at safety, but the one thing that Carpenter did really well last year was open field tackling. He proved towards the end of the year that he could be a very reliable piece on teams. They just didn't know what to do with him on defense, and they still really don't. This experiment of moving him to inside linebacker, where he's this weird kind of hybrid tweener, I don't think has worked as well as necessarily the Packers were hoping. Now, he is learning a brand new position. He still is young in his NFL career. I don't know as if they were expecting this to just be this easy switch, but at the same time, he's been a guy who had one really strong appearance during the training camp periods. He had 2 interceptions, or 2 turnovers, I should say, during family night. But other than that, he's been quiet, or he hasn't exactly been in a spot that's led to productivity for the defense, especially when you compare that against someone like a UDFA Jimmy Phillips Jr. Now, I don't think Jimmy Phillips Jr. has any chance to make the roster, but there's been a lot of times that he's been involved in the tackle. Kind of reminiscent, if you recall, from years ago, Blake Martinez, where Blake Martinez racked up the tackling numbers, but making a tackle in the backfield wasn't exactly his strong suit. He allowed the play to come to him. And it's kind of what I've seen at times from Jimmy Phillips Jr. in practice. He's just allowed things to come to him. And, hey, he just kind of racks up the tackling numbers there. So, I struggle with that position. I think I predicted the other day that they were going to leave off Tariq Carpenter. However, I don't feel good about it at all. At all. I don't feel confident in that one decision to this point. It's going to be one of the more fascinating positions on the entire roster to see what they do. And if you would have told me a few weeks ago, hey, one of the positions you're going to struggle most with is inside linebacker. I would have thought it was insane, but yet here we are. So Steve Plouts, hey Steve, will they bring in another kicker? No, to put it simply, I really think Carlson is their ride or die, at least to start the season. Now, if we get to the midway point, like it's just a disaster, then maybe. But at this juncture, both Carlson and Bisaccia have said, we believe that we have identified the problem. It has to do with the kicking motion. He needs to slow it down. So they believe that they know what's going on there. And that means that he needs practice. He needs reps in order to correct it. The second that you bring in another kicker, I think you're doing two things, and I think they're both negative. One, you're affecting the confidence of your young kicker. But two, you're also taking the practice reps that he has and splitting them in half. So I just don't think it's necessarily a position right now where we look at it and go, well, they need some competition. Like we need another guy to light the fire under the rookie's butt or to give the job to the other guy if the rookie stays inconsistent. It's not what I see here. I see that there is a technical error in his game that can be corrected as they strive for consistency. So he needs all the reps possible in order to fix it. The Green Bay Packers historically view the kicker position just like they view the quarterback position, which is we're investing in you, not for week one, maybe not even for this year. We're investing in you to be the guy for 15 years so we don't even have to give a second thought to this position. Just like they did with Mason Crosby, just like they kind of attempted to do with Brett Conway back in 97. And of course it failed horribly, but Packers were in a much different spot roster-wise at that time, too. I just think Anders Carlson is the guy. They're going to roll with him. It's going to take a complete disaster for them to move on. And we're not going to see that in my mind. All right, next question. Hi, John. Who will be the most surprising Packer not on the 53? So thank you. Thank you for joining us. Most surprising, not on the 53. I don't think that this is a year where we're going to see any massive, just like years ago we saw Mike Daniels cut. I think it was like on shareholder meeting day, or Josh Sitton was cut during the preseason. I don't think this is a year where we're going to see some big name, totally unexpected move. The biggest name that I would admit is a rough possibility right now would be Josh Nijman. And even then, I'm going to give that like a 0.2% chance of happening because the Packers want that tackle depth. Sure, it looks like Rasheed Walker has surpassed Josh on the depth chart, but they still want Josh around. Like, even if he's $4 million for their number 4 tackle on the roster, so what? They like him, they've invested in him, they trust him to start. Maybe they'll work out a trade quick, but like they're going to keep him. So the biggest surprise could very well, in my mind, be the guy I was talking about earlier, Tariq Carpenter. Did good work on special teams last year, was a Gutekunst draft pick. I could see him not being in the roster. Another one who's kind of the darling of a lot of people right now is John Ford on the defensive line. Again, second-year player, former draft pick of Gutekunst, someone who they kept on the 53 all year last year in spite of never activating him for a single game. I'll say it this way. Why do the Packers need to have 6 defensive linemen? For the last 2 years, they've had 6 defensive linemen on their roster, and they've used 2 years ago, it was Jack Heflin, who barely played, and then last year it was John Ford, who wasn't active for a single game. So the fact that they've held 6 defensive linemen historically, I don't think has any bearing here because they haven't actually freaking played them. And you're telling me that John Ford wouldn't make it onto the practice squad? Like, come on. I think he would. So I could see Ford there in spite of him being the darling of a lot of people right now. But like I was saying, I don't think that this is one year where we're going to see some super recognizable name not make it. I don't know. They want to hang on to their guys this year, be them draft guys or others. Maybe there's a few late round draft picks who aren't going to make it just because there's so many rookies this year. But this is an evaluation year. This is a transition year. It's not make a splash to shake things up kind of year. So I'd have to go that direction. Red Mo taking us back to kicker. Carlson has been only okay in practice, but ain't he like 16 of 19 in actual game-like situations? There's hope there. Yeah, you're totally right. I mean, and the thing that's really apparent about Carlson is his strong leg. Like there were multiple times in practice, and I know practice is where he struggled, like you say, but there were several times where he would try like a 42 or a 45-yard kick, and he would hit it, and it wouldn't just go through. It would clear the net. I mean, there was one rep I remember weeks ago where it was from 55, and he had plenty of room to spare. Like, it's easy to see why they've chosen to invest in this guy, even beyond the fact that Bisaccia has known him since he was 16. So he does appear, as nerve-wracking as it may be, to be a guy who may be better in games than in practice. And I would offer up too that perhaps he's more comfortable in games because in practice is where they're working to tweak his motion to find greater consistency, right? I mean, think of this almost like, I think a lot of people take this for granted with training camp, but with baseball, it's spring training. How many times do we see a pitcher march out there and throw exclusively curveballs for an entire inning because he needs to work on his curve, right? And they may get smacked around for like 6-7 runs, whatever. It's spring training, who gives a rip, but like he's got to work on his curve, so he's throwing his curve. Well, it's not that different all the time in the NFL, especially for a position like kicker where it's so isolated from the rest of the team. Bisaccia may go to him, hey, today you're only attempting your motion this way because we're going to see if this is what we find. And then he misses 3 kicks and they go, oh, snap, that ain't it, and try something again the next day. So it's all something to be bared in mind. And maybe that's part of the explanation of why Carlson has seemingly been more consistent in a game setting to this point. By the way, if you didn't see it, Bill Huber for Sports Illustrated put out this neat article the other day kind of recapping one of the latest practices. And they ended the final open to the public training camp practice with Carlson attempting 2 50-yard field goals. I guess they set up the situation like there was 1 second on the clock and game was coming to an end. And so they had Carlson line up for a 50-yarder. And then I guess they had the entire team surround Carlson and the field goal kicking operation. And they even had guys with squirt guns. They had guys just berating him vocally, and just the whole team surrounding him. So he tries kick number 1 from 50 and it winds up going wide left. So they say, all right, doing it again. And they run it back for rep number 2. And then Carlson winds up drilling number 2. I guess as soon as he kicked it, the entire surrounding team that was just basically harassing Carlson suddenly turned to cheers because they knew that that one was going in, and then everyone celebrated, and seemed like a really, really cool way to cap off the final practice, final at least open to the public practice. I really, really enjoyed reading about that. Cool little nugget picked up by Bill Huber for Sports Illustrated. Steven, welcome, Steven. Sorry it was too long kicking. I think we are stuck, but I'd rather have security on the 1-point games. Yeah, I get that. I think it's just a matter of, again, the long-term view, right? If the Packers lose a game this year by a point, 2 points, and then they wind up missing a field goal at the last second, it's going to suck and it's going to sting and we're all going to be livid. Such is life with a rookie kicker, right? Similarly to Jordan Love taking over for Rodgers, you know, Love has dealt with his certain amount of crap for the last 3 years. I think we all can admit that. And there's going to have to be a certain patience with Love at times too, right? He's going to look very, very good at times. And at other times, there's going to be throws like from the previous preseason game where he just misses it to Musgrave. It's all part of the deal with a young quarterback, but you hope to see more good than bad, right? Kicker, here we have a rookie taking over for one of the longest tenured Packers, who was beloved, and deservedly so. Mason Crosby deserved all that love. Well, now Carlson, in a different spot, deserves a lot of the support, just like we give to Love. And I know they're completely different situations. Like, I get it. I'm not meaning to oversimplify, but it's true. We can expect ups and downs with a rookie kicker. But the Packers believe that they've got their guy. So hopefully they fix it. And if they don't, we just hope that they address it in time. But I don't think that's going to be this year. Steven again saying 2 running backs, Nyman waived or traded, Whelan kept, other punter gone. All right, 2 running backs. I totally agree, Steven. Nyman, I think he's going to be kept unless they work out a trade. I talked about Nyman earlier. I don't see them outright releasing him. And then Whelan, Dan Whelan, the punter, versus Pat O'Donnell, the other punter. I'm still in the camp of they're going to keep O'Donnell because Bisaccia is not shy about his level of trust in O'Donnell. There is a lot more to being a punter than just having a big leg. Daniel Whelan absolutely has the leg, don't get me wrong. But like I've talked about with the directional punting, O'Donnell is far superior and more consistent in that regard. Holding, Dan Whelan's made a lot of progress, but Pat O'Donnell is considered the guy who's more consistent in that regard. And with a rookie kicker, you want a very consistent process. So I still think it's going to be O'Donnell who hangs on to the kicking job. Wisco Fanatic saying hi. Hi, guys. By the way, if you haven't checked out our show from last week, boy, it feels like an eternity ago. Last week, I joined up with Wisco Fanatics for a live show from Stadium View. If you haven't checked that one out yet, I would encourage you to do so. It was a really lot of fun. I know I'm going to work with these guys a bunch more. So, hi, guys. See you again soon. Lake Cable saying, I really hope kicker doesn't cost games. I can't imagine that is going to help a guy needing confidence. But hey, who need good safeties when your corners can play so far? Oh, come on, man. When your corners play so far off, they're all safeties. Yeah, right? I mean, basically last year, all the Packers corners were free safeties, right? Oh, Lordy. Okay. Yeah, I'm with you. Hope Carlson doesn't miss games. But hey, I think actually the guys from Wisco Fanatics said it really well. I think it was Tyler last week who said, if the Packers wind up losing a game because of a last-second field goal, there was a lot more wrong in that game than just Carlson missing that kick. So we have to be careful to appropriately, look at the whole picture and say, what was the totality of went wrong that led to this loss, not just the kick in the last second. And hey, I will point out, it has been mentioned by the team that they're playing a very different style of defense thus far, much more man coverage than zone, much more playing up close to the line. We have hope that they're not going to do that 10-yard garbage anymore. But, watch parties will be fun and frustrating if they do. So Pro HD saying, thoughts on Rasheed Walker starting? He seems to be making a lot of noise in camp lately. Yeah, you are totally right. Now, the only way that I can envision him starting is if Zach Tom is the starter at center, and then, of course, Walker starting at right tackle. I do believe, given their rotations and patterns lately, that Rasheed Walker has probably usurped Yash in terms of being the swing tackle. In which case, their depth at tackle is just stupid good. But, really what I'm saying is I don't think he's going to start in week 1. I think their preferred line is still Myers at center, Tom at right tackle. So, with that in mind, I don't think we see Walker as a starter. Now, if Myers continues to have snapping problems, if just the offensive line goes awry, then maybe we do see Tom sliding over to center and Walker at right tackle. It's possible. But I think it's the plan B of the two. Savage Inc. might have been asked already. Of the two very interesting rookies, Reed or Musgrave, which are you more excited about? It's a really good question. I'm going to say Musgrave. And I say that partly because of his uniqueness. Now, Reed is a scrappy little bulldog by all accounts, and he's fast. But Musgrave, and I don't want to overstate this, but Musgrave's athletic testing was something very, very rarely seen in total, right? Very, very rarely seen in the NFL. In fact, his closest comp, when you're talking RAS, at least, relative athletic scores, happened to be Travis Kelce, okay? Now, is it going to be Travis Kelce? No, no one's saying that. But that's still the athletic comp. So for the Packers to have a guy like that at the tight end position, we're talking more athletic than Jermichael Finley was. We're talking probably, again, not to overstate it, but this is probably the reality. Musgrave is probably the most athletic tight end that the Green Bay Packers have had in their 100-year history. If that can be utilized correctly, that is a whole new style of offense that can be wrapped around a player that we haven't seen before. And that, because of the uniqueness, is what I'm really, really excited for. All right, a couple more that I got to get running. Let's not forget, Sean Clifford is still 5 months older than Jordan Love. Yeah, 4 years developing, still young. The ceiling is so high, man. Redmo, you are not lying. Sean Clifford is old, just relatively speaking, for other rookies, right? And Jordan Love, when he came out, was young. So Jordan Love, 4 years in the league, just catching up to his backup. It's one of those neat little things that so rarely happens. But the overall moral of the story is Jordan Love is a very, very young quarterback, even though he's entering year 4. And you're right, sky's the limit for him. Wisco Fanatics, we trusted Rich Bisaccia with the special teams last year. Why are we shying away from that? Because a rookie kicker is struggling. 100% agreed. We have to give them a chance to fix what they're saying they know is wrong. If we're not giving them that chance, then we're not a development team. And maybe the last couple of years have kind of warped our mind of like, we're a Super Bowl contender, plug and play. If someone can't play, get them out of there, sign someone who can. It's not this team. This team is young and they're going to take their lumps and their bumps. And Carlson is no different than that. Which Packer this year is playing for a new contract? Preston Smith, Aaron Jones. Preston Smith, I don't think so. The way I interpret that contract is I think he has 4 years technically left on it, but the way that I see it is he's got 2 years before something is really going to be done with that contract. Aaron Jones, yes, he certainly is, especially given the pay cut that he took this year. There are some, I don't want to make this sound negative, but there's some questions about his age is certainly creeping up there. Will his durability continue? Yes, he's playing for new contract, but the real ones like that are playing for new contracts, of course, is Rashawn Gary entering his last year. Hopefully they extend him any minute now. Darnell Savage entering his 5th-year option. If he just turns around and all of a sudden becomes a bona fide starting safety, well, then he may find himself in a new contract. But the big one, in my opinion, and who they haven't extended yet, is A.J. Dillon, entering the last year of his contract, 4th year. A guy who, beloved by community, beloved by team, has had a up and down performance on the field, and he's admitted as such. Realistically, he has not fully lived up to the potential of what we believed he could be when picked in the 2nd round. And here he is entering his contract year. So I think he, almost more than anyone else on the team, is going to need to just play with his hair on fire to prove I can be that guy. I can be that guy for the foreseeable future, and you need to lock me into a contract. All right, couple more real quick, because I got to go. Fun question. Do you think Jordan Love will have more rushing touchdowns or interceptions? Because I think he'll have about 14 picks, 28. Woo! That is fun. Put me down for interceptions. Love, I think, is certainly a more mobile quarterback than we're used to, but I don't know how often that's going to translate in the red zone. A lot of the running that we've seen from Love thus far in camp has been pulling it down and running in broken plays. He hasn't had that many designed runs, although as camp has gone on, they've brought in more option style plays. So it's certainly is possible. We're going to see designed runs for Love, but I don't necessarily think they're going to come near the goal line where there's a lot of carnage. So put me down for interceptions over rushing touchdowns, but it's not out of the realm of possibility that we're going to see like an 8 to 10 rushing touchdown year for Jordan Love. But picks, I think, will edge it out a little bit. Keith saying, great draft. Lost is the pick of Clifford in round 5. He has won over naysayers. You're spot on, Keith. I mean, I remember hosting a live draft party, and there were people on this channel who were upset about the choice of Sean Clifford. I think a lot of them are Badger fans and have watched Clifford at Penn State. But the Packers, I still believe to this day, they picked him partly because of his age. He was a little bit older. They chose him because of his intelligence, because he was a captain the last 6 years of his life. Sean Clifford, by all accounts, is a leader and a guy that they wanted in the quarterback room. The fact that he's turning into little baby Brett Favre out there, just slinging it around for better or worse, is just kind of this added bonus. So Clifford is looking like an excellent pick at this point and should be a wonderful number 2, hopefully for years to come. Janelle, my wide receivers are in order: Watson, Dobbs, Reed, Heath, Toure, Wicks, Dubose, if they keep 7. Toure has more snaps in the slot than all of the other receivers added up that are not named Reed. Yeah, actually, I mean, Janelle, you and I have gone back and forth about Toure, and I would say that I actually like that order a lot. I think it's kind of hard to dictate an order of like Wicks versus Toure versus Heath. Wicks, especially because of his injury problems. Toure, because he really does play a different position than Wicks or Heath. But that is very much the order that I would agree on. And I personally have a hard time seeing them keep 7 right now. But hey, I mean, if they do, I think that's the exact order. I think you got it. Wisco Fanatic saying all Jaden Reed does is catch touchdowns. You ain't kidding. That little man finds the end zone. It's downright impressive. Let's see. I'm going to take 2 more, just 2 more. Zach saying Alex Magoo said he has been around quarterbacks who have been to Super Bowls and Pro Bowls. Says Jordan Love has it. Jair has said that J Love can't get rattled, as Jair himself said he has tried. Yeah, that was a really cool quote from Jair, wasn't it? About the, I've been trying all camp to get to this guy and he just won't break. What more do you want to hear about your young quarterback, right? Jordan Love has this kind of stoic, calm presence at all times. It's refreshing. And he's not Rodgers, and especially these later years of Rodgers, who felt comfortable openly showing scorn on the field at times. He's also not Favre, where in a Super Bowl he's going to rip off his helmet and run down the field, right? Jordan Love is much more introverted, much more introspective, much more, pulls it all inside rather than bursting out. It's a different flavor, a different style of leadership, but I don't think anyone can deny that the Green Bay Packers have his back. Legabo's saying, since I joke about it, sorry, I love hearing your thoughts. Boss, got my wheels turning. I think it is telling that the players love Joe Barry despite the frustration last year. Yeah, it's true, right? I mean, Rasul Douglas, Frank, literally calls him Joey Badass. But the thing is, I think Joe Barry, and it's been lost in a lot of this, is a player's coach. We have ridiculed him for, well, the players have to go to Joe Barry and tell them how they want to play defense. And then Joe Barry's got to adjust the calls because not what he does. And why do the players got to go to the coach? It's the wrong way. Well, I think we all kind of knew, and I think LaFleur knew it, that was Joe Barry's style. He's a player's coach, and he relies on the guys that he trusts. And I don't think that's that out of bounds. He's also a very high-energy coach. I personally believe that the relationship between Joe Barry and Jerry Gray, that by all accounts we have heard turned toxic last year, I think we haven't fully understood the impact that had on the team. I really believe that as we saw a number of players in the secondary have a worse year than they had in years, came because of a conflict between the defensive coordinator and the defensive pass game coordinator. We've heard again and again that it turned toxic, and they respected Gray and they loved Barry. But I think the players were caught in the middle. Philosophical and personality differences. Maybe that's what needed to change. And maybe the secondary returns to its usual self this year. At the end of the day, we just don't know. We're not going to know till we get to some games. So, hey, y'all, thanks. I got to get running. Time for me to get back to my family. Finish vacation tomorrow, and then you're going to hear from me. Probably not going to do anything. I am going to watch the game tomorrow, of course, but probably not going to put out any content-wise stuff since we're going to be packing up and beginning to travel home after the game. But for sure, Monday, I'll be putting something out, recapping thoughts, priming for the inevitable cutdowns. Expect the schedule of Monday, Wednesday, Friday to like get back to normal this week. I'm excited. I hope you are too. Thanks so much for joining me here on the live. Like I see Janelle left a comment of hit like. Yes, please do hit like, share, comment, do all the stuff that we know helps Lombardi Time Brews. I am so incredibly thankful that you chose to spend a little bit of your Friday here with me. Hope you all have an absolutely wonderful weekend. And as always, go Pack Go.